Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kristen LeBlanc. I am the Executive Director of ATAP, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I'm going to try to speak slowly because I see we have a few people that are still joining us, so I'll try to drag this out a little bit so we can get everyone in on the meeting. Eightfold is presenting our live stream today, and we're very excited to thank Eightfold for their sponsorship and for their content today. It's going to be very, very exciting and interesting. Eightfold AI delivers a talent intelligence platform, the most effective way for organizations to retain top performers, upskill and reskill the workforce, recruit top talent efficiently, and reach diversity goals. Eightfold AI's deep learning intelligence, artificial intelligence platform empowers enterprises to turn talent management into a competitive advantage. For more information, you can visit eightfold.ai. And we are so pleased that you could join us today. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to thank Eightfold again for their sponsorship and support of ATAP. If you aren't yet familiar, ATAP is the only membership association for all professionals working in talent acquisition. So if you're a recruiter or a sourcer, if you work in candidate engagement and social media strategy and employer branding, you have a home and a community within ATAP. And a quick note, just to let you know that we're looking forward to our 4th annual Global TA Day on September 1st, Wednesday, September 1st, which is in 2 weeks. You can find more information on the day-long event and celebration and sign up at globaltaday.com. Eightfold is also a premier sponsor of our Global TA Day, so look for a special session that day from them as well. And for today's content, we are excited to hear more from Andrea Shaw in her presentation, Win the Unprecedented Competition for Talent Through Deep Data Insights. We hope you enjoyed today's live stream. If you have any questions for Andrea during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. Now, I'd like to formally introduce Andrea. Andrea is the head of talent strategy and transformation for Eightfold, where she provides insights and experiences to talent and HR executives on talent transformation and the role that Eightfold plays in delivering on talent priorities. Andrea previously worked at American Express for 25 years, transforming products, processes, and operations. Most recently, Andrea led the transformation of the American Express talent acquisition function as head of their global talent acquisition. So without further ado, I'll introduce Andrea and let her take it from here.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So as you shared with everyone, yes, I did have a role at American Express for 25 years, worked across almost every business unit. I came into the talent acquisition function after having many different roles in the company, working with some of our top accounts. I managed the Platinum Centurion card. I even managed global payroll at one point. And my most recent role was managing talent acquisition. And the common theme in my role was really around transformation. And so I did many things as a talent acquisition leader. I brought our recruiters in-house. We were previously 70% outsourced. I launched a new employer branding effort and a new career site. And one of the biggest impacts that I implemented was really the Eightfold platform. Rolling out the Eightfold platform was a really big game changer. And so I want to share with this group today a little bit about that. And what I did was spend some time thinking about it, because I think at the outset, when we decided at Amex to implement Eightfold, it was really driven by the matching. The idea of matching candidates to jobs was so rich. And what I learned after we implemented was the solution did so much more than matching, or that matching capability enabled so much. So what I wanted to come today is share with this group kind of the insights around what the difference maker was that impacted so many things. And it boils down to really understand in a really deep way kind of the details and the skill insights on talent, and also what talent you were looking for the roles that you had. So I'm going to walk you through kind of why that's the big difference maker and how much that enables. So really trying to simplify kind of this idea of AI in the space of talent acquisition. But before I begin, and just let me know if there's anything technically, Kristen, that's not working smoothly, but I'm just going to keep going, and I'll pause for questions along the way. So to start with, I call it a really exciting time to be in talent acquisition. There's so much going on. And I feel like people that are in talent acquisition love a good challenge. We are always working on things that require so many different skills, to get done. And so I feel like people in talent acquisition really like a good challenge. And this is a time that we have a lot of challenges, right, to really have a big impact and bring solutions that have a big impact for our companies. And so I have in front on the slide here an overview on headlines. This is just a few of so many that surface as I looked at headlines around jobs and work. And as you can see, these are all the things that we are managing. So much is happening. There's a lot of discussion around the Great Resignation. And as you can see, it's not even clear if it is a Great Resignation. There's also headlines saying employers aren't buying into it. We're also having a lot of competition for similar roles. And so you can see the headlines here around blockchain, technology. And then that competition is leading to really aggressive signing bonuses. There's a lot happening around diversity and needing to make sure we're inclusive in our hiring. And then retention, like how do we make sure, we engage with our existing employees in the recruiting process so that we retain our talent. So all of these things kind of are things you're probably managing as talent acquisition leaders and participants. And so I talk about this because I think to meet these needs, I really think the solution of understanding deep skill insights is what really brings a solution to address many of these things. So let me quickly move on. So I want to share with you a little bit around why deep skill insights makes the difference and why it enables so many things and addresses so many of the issues that I just mentioned and priorities that are coming up. So when you understand skill insights in depth, you have an ability to use that information to help understand like what is the workforce you have, and then envision like what are the skills that are needed by your company to really deliver on the business results you have. And it differs by company depending on where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. It also gives you the ability to understand how do you develop the talent that you already have, and what do you want to develop with that talent, and how do they move to different jobs and build the skills that they need to move to different jobs. And then finally, for this group, what's very salient is obviously finding the right talent. So all of those things come about when you have deep skill insight. So I'm going to talk about that in a way that's specific and clear so that you can see how that unleashes so much around the whole end-to-end talent life cycle. So let me start with this first page. I'm going to use an example for a product manager, because a product manager is a role that's very common in most companies, whether it's a product, every company has a product or service, right, that they offer. So I felt like this might be a very relevant role to talk about. The data I'm going to share with you comes from Eightfold's data. Eightfold has half the workforce, over 1 billion records on careers in their database, and they use that information. They take the information about jobs, skills, titles, companies, and even location, and they understand the relationship between all that information, and they also look at movement for people with different skills. And they bring that all together to really give some great insights on skills. And that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share that context about what the reference for the data is, and it's quite powerful. So coming back to product managers, if you look at this role, what you can see is what's happening over time in terms of the prevalence of product manager roles. And then on the right, what you can see is there are a lot of skills that are involved in product manager roles. And when you take a look at that, you are able to get insights on what are the skills that are rising, what are skills that are stable, what are skills that are declining, and even potentially obsolete skills. Right? So these insights give you an idea of like, what do you have currently in your skill set? What do you need to be able to succeed on the business objectives that you have for your company? And this is pretty dramatic in terms of being able to determine what you're looking for. On the next page, you can also get insights on what are the fastest growing skills for any role. So again, taking a look at product manager, what you can see is what were the top skills in 2010. It even goes back to 2000, which seems like a very long time ago. But you can look at the top skills in 2010 and take a look at the top skills in 2020. And you can see just by the line charts, there's a lot shifting in the world in general, but even impacting product manager roles and many roles. So you can see what the top skills that are emerging in 2020 and do a comparison of 2010. And so you can see a lot happening around digital skills, Python, and analytics, which is expected, right? A lot more data is now available. We've got a lot more databases to leverage, and a lot more insights to gain from that to really have an impact on products. The next page talks about the ability to compare with the best-in-class companies. And so this, for the purposes of product management, is really looking at companies that are really leading the way and primarily focused on product management roles. So that includes the Googles, Facebooks, Amazons, Apples, Microsoft, amongst others, companies. And what you can see is what's emerging. What are the top skills for the best-in-class companies? What are the skills that are rising and what are the skills that are declining? And then on the right, what you can see is what are the top 3 fastest growing skills in the best-in-class companies. And I think this is really interesting. I think digital product development is no surprise. Digital solutions are growing so quickly. What I think is really interesting is also looking at user experience and user research. So there's a really strong growing focus on user experience for product management, and that makes so much sense. So I know lots of companies, as they're thinking about their roles, that's definitely an insight to consider if you don't have user research and user experience in your product management skill set priorities. And the next page, I just want to show really quickly, you can take those insights on what are the top skills, what's emerging, and what are the best-in-class companies growing skills in. And what you can do is determine what is right for your company, right? What is the priorities? What are you trying, where are you going with your products? Where are you in that life cycle? And you can determine what are the key skills that you're looking for? What are the requirements that you have for skills in your jobs? And this is really important because I think in my experience, it's kind of disaggregate for the most part. A lot of times you've got individuals in different parts of the organization just coming up with their own ideas, or they're listing skills that are extensive and exhaustive. And it's really hard to find the right talent when you're doing that. This gives an ability to really inform that centrally in a really powerful way so you can really understand what talent you're looking for. I'm just going to pause there to see, Kristen, are there any questions that are coming up?
We have one question, and it's from Michael Connolly. He asks, what is a prevalence index?
The prevalence index. Going back to take a look. I think this is where it is. So the prevalence, oh, here it is. So the prevalence is really kind of what is it tells you about kind of the growth or the decline of the role in terms of its prevalence in companies. And so as you can see for product management, the role relevance is growing. It's becoming a stronger and more common role in most companies.
Okay, and one more question. Can you select from a list the companies to compare against, for that question of what do best-in-class companies do?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Kristen. I didn't catch that question.
I'm going to read it exactly as it's typed. Can you select from a list the companies to compare against for that question of what do best-in-class companies do?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think what we have at Eightfold is obviously we don't want to share specifics for one company. We typically look at peer sets or best in class. We can aggregate 10 companies and give kind of the insights on that, because I think what we're very careful about is we don't want to be too transparent for one specific company. But yes, we have the ability to do that. Good
And the
question.
follow-up to the prevalence data was, how is it calculated? Do you want to chat about that now?
Yeah, so actually, can I follow up on that? If I can get that individual's name, I can
Sure.
definitely get back. I would need to talk to our analytics team to understand exactly how that's calculated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, we have one more question if you want to pause for just one more second. I assume the database is referring to generic skills. Skills tend to be defined in a number of ways, and one challenge is to have a common language and make skills contextual.
Yeah, that's a great point. So because of the depth of data that we have, and because, as I said, is half the world's workforce, we've had an ability to really understand skills in depth, right? Because when you talk about skills, you're right, it is contextual. A lot of people describe their skills in different ways, and they may mean the same skill set, but they're describing it with different words. And so what AFL does is actually take insights about people in similar roles, understanding what their skill sets are, how they're defining it, and then trying to make sure when we talk about, a particular skill set and you're trying to match an individual to that skill set, we're capturing all those different descriptors that should be considered, right, for the experience for that role. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm just trying to articulate, because I think the difficult thing is if you say you have product development experience, it might mean something different than what somebody else says. And so there's a lot of comparison points across different roles and types of roles in different companies to really determine like what are the ranges of descriptions of the different skills so that you can really be inclusive in terms of looking at candidates. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's a way that we look at roles, and I can jump in that. Actually, that's my next page around adjacent skills. Right, adjacent skills can predict potential for other skills and roles. So I'm going to pause there to that question to see if there's any follow-up to the question that was just asked.
Oh, yes. Yep, I understand. Skills taxonomies matter in this case. Hence my question, Andrea, if you guys have considered taxonomies.
Oh, absolutely. That's, I think, very foundational to Eightfold's approach and a lot of the algorithms. But yes, absolutely.
And one last question, then we can move on and come back. Can the data be broken down geographically?
Yes. So I'm going to share that with you before I wrap up, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like and what that means.
Great, thank you.
So just talking about adjacencies to skills. So one of the things that, I think a lot of people talk about potential. And I think this is a way that you can really get at potential in a really believable way. So basically, Eightfold can look through the data. They can look through kind of the common skills for different roles. They can also look through movement, over time, and what that movement looks like. And so have an ability to predict potential for talent and people with different skills to move into certain or develop certain skill sets. So what you see here for some of the top skills for product management roles is some of the adjacent skills that are developed, identified. So for example, for product management, there's product development, product marketing, business development, product launch, and product lifecycle management. I think what's also interesting too is you can look at project management, and see project planning, portfolio management, budgeting, program management, and team management. So you can see for all these different types of top skills that you might be looking for, there are adjacent skills that you can also take a look at. So on the right, what you see is the availability of individuals that have a known skill. So for product management, and then you can take a look at those that have adjacent skills. And what you can see is you end up with a pool of 3.3 times more candidates to consider, right? And so you can look at that externally, or you can even look at that internally. So you can take a look at your internal talent. So if you have a commitment, for example, to really prioritize your internal talent for movement, you can find individuals that have a high likelihood and potential to really develop skills. So those are ways that you can leverage, the adjacencies, adjacent skills to help look at who has the potential to be successful for other skills. I want to very quickly show you, well, first I'm going to talk about diversity. I want to show you also what can be done with the adjacencies to help you find more diverse talent. So here's just one example, though, I want to just share on diversity representation by industry. So Eightfold, with its insights, can also provide a view on what is the representation and the percentage of representation of diversity. This is specifically for product managers, for your company versus the industry overall, or for this role versus the industry overall. And then you can even take a look by gender diversity. What is the representation for product managers versus an industry overall? So you can really understand, like, what is the availability of diverse talent for the role that's most common, generally, and then also in the industry. How does that compare for the industry overall? You can even take a look within your own organization, your company's organization, to understand how that compares. So with diversity as a lens, of focus, which I know many in talent acquisition are really focused on today, you can always also use adjacent skills to help you grow diverse talent. So for example, here, if you were filling a role and business development was a critical skill that you were looking for, you can take a look at an adjacency of strategic planning. And what you can see is that doubles your pool of candidates to consider if you really have a commitment to growing female talent, in your organization. You can see the same thing if you're looking for product development skills. Product management is an adjacency that has a higher rate of penetration in female candidates. So you can also use product management as a skill to consider when looking at product development roles. So before I move on, I'm going to pause on adjacencies to see if there's any questions. I find adjacencies really powerful because I think when you talk about potential, this is a really specific way to talk about potential in a way that I think is believable, because it's based on a lot of data of where you've got these common skills and where the movement happens with people with these various skills.
Andrew, we have one question. Can you explain the data source? How is this data being collected?
Sure. So the data source comes from publicly available data. I think we also work across many of the companies that we have to also build on the data sets that we have and understanding of kind of the relationship between this data. So, so when we work with a specific account or a customer, we will kind of work with them to understand their organization's data. But then we also build on that with a lot of public data. As I said, over 1 billion workers' data that we leverage to really give some really rich insights. Okay. So going on to the next, I know this is a little bit more talent management, but there's a little bit of a talent acquisition lens in this too. But what we're able to do is if you are able to define, what are the product manager skills that are really critical for roles in your company to drive the business outcomes, you have this transparency and the ability for people in other roles to understand what skills are required relative to the skills that they have. So all of a sudden, with that transparency, they're able to understand, like, what are some areas that I want to kind of develop my skills? Are there projects that I can take on to help me with those skills? I think Eightfold also enables the ability to find individuals in the company that do have those skills, so that you can seek a mentor and get some insights about what's important to learn, get some coaching too if that's important in your career journey. So when you have that transparency on skills that are required for specific roles, and then also understand the skills that your employees have, you kind of give them a roadmap to really develop their career in the direction that they'd like to go, so they can focus on development in a way that helps them move in the path that they want to in their careers. And so this is just an example of looking through, different roles that may be out there that people might have, what skills that can be defined that they need to move into a product manager role if that's something that they're looking for. And then you had a question earlier about geography. So I want to share a little bit about the skill supply in the US and how that works. And so what's interesting here, we took a look at product management skills, cross-functional team leadership skills, and also project management skills. And you can see the concentration of these skills. And so what's interesting that I found interesting here is that product management tends to be more concentrated in California, and project management tends to be more concentrated in New York. I think that's an interesting observation, but you can actually understand where those roles and skills are available. And so there's a skill that's highly competitive and really critical for roles that you will be expanding. You have an ability to take a look at where you can find those roles. I think another so what that I think is really important in this time is I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out, do we want these roles to be virtual, or do we want them, based near an office? And here's an interesting insight, right? If you take a look at product managers in Texas, there's a certain number of talent that you can find that are strong matches. If you expand that across the US, your talent pool increases for strong matches by 15 times. Right? So these are good insights. I feel like, there's a lot of roles that are in high competition these days. I think every company is looking for very similar skills and talent. And this gives you insights to really understand like what you can do in terms of growing your pools of talent. Or I know some companies have talked about trying to figure out where do they want to set up a new office location or hub. And this is a helpful tool to do that. So, Chris, I'm just going to pause there to see if there are any other questions before I move on for the data pages.
We have one. Does your model work with skill descriptions in languages other than English?
Yes. Yeah, so we actually, we have a lot of clients in Europe and Asia. And so, absolutely. I don't know how many languages right now. I'm sure there's some languages that we don't have covered, but that's a follow-up I can also take on to get back to you. Great. So here's kind of here's hopefully what I've been able to kind of convey. So if you really understand deeply skills and potential, this is what I learned at Amex. Again, as I said, I was looking forward to having that matching capability. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh, wait a minute. If I have this ability to understand skills clearly, and I've defined what skills I need for my roles, look what else I can do. I realized that along the way. Like now, I can actually look at my ATS platform, right? And I can see all the candidates that applied, millions of candidates that applied just over the past 2 years. And I can really understand that talent. And that talent can become, I can source from that database in a way that I wasn't able to before, right? Previously, it was just really manual for a recruiter to go in and try to find talent. Now, all of a sudden, I can search that database in a really agile way. And I consider them warmed leads because they had gone through the trouble to apply for roles, at my company. And so this gives like a really valuable database to tap into and actually to build on. So, you have the ability to do that. I'm going to focus on the talent acquisition in terms of the new activities enabled, but all of a sudden your ATS platform and database becomes a proprietary database for you to leverage. Your recruiters have the ability to screen, thousands of applicants in minutes. So, I took a look at, roles where we had high volumes of applicants. And what was interesting is when we went in to take a look at the matching, we left a lot of stronger matches on the table. And that's because recruiters were going through resumes in a more manual way. And as a result, once they kind of found like their top 10 candidates, they didn't, out of necessity, didn't go through all the candidates because they had many roles to fill. And so this becomes really powerful because they can screen all candidates and they can do it really quickly and find those strong matches as you've defined based on the skills that are important for the role. CRM, if you think about it, becomes highly targeted. You can really find those strong matches. And I felt like what became really powerful is rather than sending out blast emails, was having my recruiters know who are those strong fits and being able to build relationships with them directly so that when roles opened up, they were ready, they were ready to kind of bring into the pipeline. AFOLD also has hiring leader tools to help them with the whole screening process. So they have access, and that was some feedback that we've got, not just from American Express, but from other companies, that hiring leaders really love to have that ability, that transparency to see candidates and why they are matched. And they actually have the ability then to also go in to take a look at those candidates and really validate, are those really the candidates they want to invest in interviewing? And so that becomes really automated. That becomes really simple. They can just give a thumbs up, thumbs down. It was something hiring leaders really loved. AFOLD also enables diverse talent pipelines and also interview slates. There's functionality that they have that helps support insights on, do you have a diverse slate? Or even pipelining, helping your recruiters to pipeline talent so that when you have a role open up, you can bring in and make sure you're inclusive in terms of bringing the talent onto your slate. And then, of course, dashboards, right? To really understand how are you doing with regards to your performance, your hiring performance. What does your time to fill look like? What is the volume of recs that recruiters can manage? All those things. What is the high match scores? What volume of the candidates that you're bringing to the table are high matches? So all of those things come about. And of course, I think related to talent acquisition is also the talent insights. I just shared a lot of that. You can actually determine and work with your business leaders to determine what are really the right skill requirements and bring to them the insights on those skills so that they can make the determination for what's really critical for their business objectives. You can benchmark, as I shared, with the best-in-class companies. You can assess those skills and really understand, what kind of skills you have in your organization already. And all that goes towards really shaping hiring activities at scale. You can centrally shape many of those things across the world. And on the right, I talked about this, but the transparency of understanding what skills are required for different jobs at different levels is what gives employees the ability to really create their pathways, create their development plans. It's really, I think, very much about the transparency that really kind of empowers them to really shape their own careers. We've got a lot of accounts who've rolled this out and have really great um, results coming from it. And actually, talking about results, I want to share some data on results that we're seeing from some of the accounts that we've already rolled out that have been utilizing Eightfold for some time. So with regards to quality, just kind of the application process, when you've got matching on your career site, when a candidate comes to your site and they're trying to sort through thousands of jobs, and the job descriptions, from my experience, can be very vague. They can be something like marketing 1 and marketing 2. An external candidate has no idea what that means. And so this helps them really find the right roles and helps them understand why they are matched and why they're a good fit. We've also seen a really large increase in female applicants through some of the matching activity that's happened. On the experience side, we've seen a lot of internal mobility improvements, 26% by Prudential, and 81% more internal hires by Tata Communication. And then with regards to efficiency, I was talking about how quickly recruiters can screen candidates. We've seen 35% faster time to fill overall for ConAgra and 60% fewer recruiter hours per role at AirAsia. So just want to share with you, when you automate these things, you make them transparent, you make them clear, and you leverage that AI insight, there can be some really big impacts. So I'm going to close really quickly to share by sharing, the whole concept of this is that this is a talent intelligence platform. It has a lot of data in it, a lot that we've learned on the relationship with that data over time, and algorithms that really kind of create the solutions and insights and tools that really help you along all those things I just talked about. We take the insights, somebody asked about the data earlier, but we take the insights from a company's existing data, and give them the ability to leverage that data. Today, I think that data exists on multiple platforms in all different forms. And so what Eightfold does is just aggregate all that data on one platform and gives you that same consistent view on talent and skills. We also leverage global data sets and public data sources to really enhance the data that a company has in their database, and then help on all fronts. So bring solutions for talent acquisition, talent management, and Talent Flex is really for contractors. So hopefully I've been able to shed some light on why having that depth of insights on skills is so critical for anybody in the talent space.
Thank you, Andrea. That was awesome. If anyone has any questions, we'll pause here for a minute and you can type them in the Q&A box. Okay, let's see. Someone's got their hand raised, so I'm going to unmute you. Michael Conley, can you hear us? Michael, can you hear us? You can go ahead and speak now if you can hear us.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Apologize for the unmute. So I've been a big fan and admirer of what Eightfold is doing, and I'm trying to figure out, however, will Eightfold compete against recruiters by setting up their own recruiting methodologies, or will it always be providing insights to recruiters?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I think Eightfold's focus is not about replacing recruiters, for sure. I think what they do bring, though, is a lot of efficiencies for the recruiter. And so I know every company has different strategies. I think there are some companies that have wanted to drive and deliver efficiencies. And they have done that through Eightfold in their resources. I know for me, when I was at American Express, my focus was really on delivering the experience to candidates and also to hiring leaders. So what I was looking to do is free up the time for recruiters from these tactical activities and allow them to be more consultative, right, with the hiring leaders, and also to deliver the experience in particular for the most, the talent that we were competing most heavily for. And so that was, the intention that I had with regards to the efficiencies. So I think the intention for Eightfold is just to bring valuable solutions. I think it's up to the company to determine like what direction they take that. And I see already companies are taking different approaches to that. Some efficiencies, some quality, increasing their focus on quality, and some increasing their focus on experience.
Thank you.
We have a couple questions, 2 more questions. One is, you shared some of the data capabilities, sources, visualization, etc. Is there any support to use the data interpretation in context, visualize it in a variety of ways, storytelling most effectively?
So I'm trying to make sure I understand that question. Is that question about pertaining to a specific company?
I'm gonna open the mic.
Okay.
Detlef, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Let me just close this. Hi, Andrea. This is Detlef. So my question was related to the skills required really to interpret data, because one of the data capabilities you can build, which is what you guys have done.
Mm-hmm.
And many companies do this, of course, specifically for business purposes, not for talent, but for business purposes. But then the question is, if internally or any company has the skills actually to use the data, and that really, because that requires asking the right questions, understanding the data in front of me, finding the right data, putting it in context, and being able to interpret what I see in relation to my own company, being able to visualize it in a way that it's appealing and interesting for others. And this is where the storytelling comes from, and then articulate it in a way that I can convince other people that it's good data to look at and
Yes.
start a conversation about. That's where I'm coming from really with my
Absolutely.
question.
That's a great question. So one of the things, as you said, there's a lot of companies that provide data insights. AI is like the hot topic these days. I think the one thing for me, one of the reasons I chose Eightfold over other providers is their workflow tools, right? Because I think there's a point you're making that it has to be easy to use, or else it may not be used, right? I think recruiters, if you look at recruiters as an audience, they have followed a particular process for years and years and years. And so now you're introducing a new process and new tools for them to use. And so it has to be very user friendly and also help them facilitate the process, know what steps they need to take next.
Right.
And that was actually one of the reasons that I chose Eightfold a few years ago, is because I saw their tools, their workflow tools is what I called them, and they were significantly stronger than anything else I saw. So they really help streamline the process, make sure it moves forward. To your point, in terms of the story it tells, Eightfold has identified, I think it was 3 or 4 areas that they assign stars in terms of the strength of the fit. And it can be, for certain skills, it could be by their job title, it could be by their experience, it could be by their potential. So I think I don't have it in front of me, I have a screenshot that shows that, but there's about 4 to 5 different descriptors that indicate why this person's a match. And they're not 5-star in every one of them, because there's judgment involved in this. There has to be, right? But you can take a look at those and understand, at least for the candidates, why they're matching, why they're not matching, and then take a deeper look. So it becomes much easier for recruiters to really understand, like, why are they matching? Is this really right? Why are they weak on this front? You know, is that okay for me to still put them forward? And the same thing for hiring leaders. So they do give tools that are pretty easy in telling the story about why this candidate is a match. Actually, one thing I found really interesting that Eightfold provides is you can even put in a really strong performer, somebody who's really great at that role, and they will take a look at those skills and they can and experience, and they can even take a look at people whose skill and experience are similar to that individual's. So it's really interesting, like all the applications that come about. But this is a feature within Eightfold. So yes, I could probably talk about many ways to tell this story and different ways to find the story. But yeah, I think you're right. It's complicated. Like every job is different in terms of what you're looking for and the expertise that you're looking for, and what really is needed based on what the company's trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Andrea.
So what was the most challenging piece of implementing this solution?
The implementation is pretty easy. Eightfold is actually very streamlined in doing this in terms of integrating the platform, with your existing HR platforms. I think the hardest thing is actually is just what we were talking about, that getting recruiters to change their process and use the new tools. And that's why I think Eightfold's user-friendly tools become really important, because they have to be user-friendly in order for hundreds of recruiters to adopt the tool, all over the world. So I think that is one of the underestimated things about driving this change and this transformation.
Okay, and one last question: which company sizes would most benefit from this, as smaller size companies do not have enough data to do the match or predict the skills required to be successful?
So you'd be surprised. We actually have a huge range of companies. We even have governments where we're working with, like, the state of Indiana. And I love this idea because they're trying to help a lot of their their residents who are impacted by COVID find jobs, right? There's a lot of shifting of jobs between industries impacted by COVID. And so they've actually leveraged Eightfold for matching. We just signed with 110, trying to help Black workers connect to jobs in corporations, which is a huge initiative working across 50 companies. But we also work with some really small companies too, because you still need the ability to find talent, right? If you're 500 people, you're 1,000 people, you still need to be able to find good talent. It still takes time, it still takes resources. So we have a range of clients, from the largest Fortune 50 companies to companies. I'm not sure, actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure which company would be our smallest company from the standpoint of employees. I could check into that. Actually, that's an interesting question to ask.
Okay, and I keep them last, but we do have one last. Matching candidates with top performers is a great feature. My question: are candidates then scored and we get the top matching candidates? What insights do we get? Not sure.
So it's kind of what I was just sharing earlier. There's 5, and sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head right now. There's 5 aspects of how a candidate matches to a job. I think some of it is related to really simple things like their title, their skill sets, their potential, and I don't remember the others, but there are different variables you can take a look at to see how they're matching, and what makes them a strong match. And I think most of the matches might have a weakness in a certain area. Again, as I said, that allows you to take a look at that and determine, like, is that weakness workable for the needs of this role? So that's why I feel like it's a really strong way that gives you the insights broken down, but also allows you to apply judgment where you'd like to.
Okay, we have another one. How does this intelligent assist with DEI initiatives? Are you able to garner diversity data from the insights?
Yes. We're able to basically, give with, I think, like 98% confidence, the diversity of the candidate, whether it's race, gender. However, one of the challenges I faced is there are laws in the US that anybody making that decision of whether a candidate, proceeds or is hired cannot have access to that data. And so I know one of the things I looked at doing was actually set up a small team that was not, involved in the specific requisition, filling that requisition. They just worked on pipelining, using that data insight to make sure for the roles that we were hiring for, we had a strong, diverse talent pool in our pipeline that recruiters could then tap into to pull into their slates. I think the other thing that AFL does is they have the ability to, if you have some, requirements, or I don't know if you can call them requirements, but if you have diversity guidelines, for your candidate slates, you can also automate that so that a recruiter can basically look at the slate before they recommend it to see how am I doing relative to the guidelines. And that's a great tool because then they can determine, like, do I need to go back and work harder? Do I need to look at more inclusive channels? Do I need to tap into more of the pipeline where I might be able to find diverse talent? So I think those are really powerful tools. And then AFL can tell you how you're doing. They can tell you in each step of the recruiting funnel, what does the representation look like? Are there parts of the process where it's falling down? Is it the screening? Is it the sourcing? Is it the interview slate? Is it the decisioning? So you can actually understand, are there areas of the process that you might want to focus on? And then generally show you kind of what is your performance overall? Are you meeting the goals that you have in terms of being more inclusive?
Great, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you to Andrea for this awesome presentation and to Eightfold for their support of ATAP and this content. You can find more information at eightfold.ai and more information on ATAP at atapglobal.org. Oh, wait, we have a question. Another question, goodness. That was one of my question marks. How would you get skills data from large organizations for the database given the EU data regulations, HR regulations, ethical rules, and the lack of systematic use of robust skills taxonomy in many organizations? Not all, there are exceptions like IBM, Microsoft, LinkedIn, who have great skills taxonomies. Anyway, great session. So I don't know if that's a question or a comment, but.
So I think the one thing I want to say is one of our top clients and early clients is Bayer, who is German-based company. So I'm not able to talk to this in great detail, but we've rolled out both talent acquisition and talent management and integrated all their data on their existing employees and also their talent acquisition candidate database, and have been able, we've been able to kind of implement this and pass all the kind of compliance requirements.
Right. And one last comment. Thank you, Andrea. You gave us a very useful information. So I agree. So on that happy note, I'll say thank you to everyone and thank you to Andrea. You'll all have a nice day.
Great. Thank you. Take care, everyone.